And eventually the shift happened where, you know, instead of focusing on, who's lucky to get me, it was like, am I lucky to get a job? 86 rejection letters, and I don't know why I kept them. It's the size of a brick. It weighs about as much as a brick, but there are 86 letters from companies who said, good luck. And every single letter was a nail in my coffin of self-confidence, because, here you are ready to embark upon a life and a pathway that was, one that we were told this is the route you take. If you want to have a conversation, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to listen to you and ask questions and be there to support you, because I know what it feels like to be ignored. How do we make this a better place? And I came up with the need for us to care. But what CARE stands for is collaboration, adaptability, resilience, and empathy.
There comes a time in our lives when we may feel lost. And I can say that during that season of my life, I found it incredibly challenging just to get up and take on the day. We feel lost because life has lost its meaning and its purpose. So how do we reclaim our purpose? And how do we go back and find meaning again? Well, some would say it starts with a journey back home. Now, before we get into all that, I just want to say, if you're interested in raising your standards as a father, a husband, an entrepreneur, then I encourage you to participate in our Band of Brothers group mentorship program. We're a group of ordinary guys working towards living extraordinary lives. You can find us at the Awakened Man Training Academy at members.theawakenedman.net. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life. Many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Have you ever felt lost in your life? And if so, what did you do to break free from that feeling? The feeling of being lost is some of the darkest times anyone can go through. Young or old, it doesn't matter. What does matter is finding a pathway that leads to a life full of meaning and purpose. And today, my guest shares his story for being lost to finding his way back home. So allow me to introduce my guest. Sam Thiara is a professional who has created a personal journey as a storyteller, a writer, a workshop facilitator, problem solver, educator, and an entrepreneur. Now, Sam is a founder and chief motivating officer of Ignite the Dream Coaching and Consulting. It's a platform that engages his audience to define their path. And added to everything else that he's doing, in his most recent book, Lost and Found, Seeking the Past and Finding Myself, which focuses on his journey to India to help him find his ancestral roots, with little less than a faded photograph and a ton of determination. Welcome to the show, Sam. How are things today, my friend?
It's going really well. And thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to share some insights and stories and things that may be nuggets that may help your listeners wherever they may be.
Absolutely. And that's the hope for it. Well, my first question is I ask all my guests is that in here at the Awakened Man, we always talk all of us being on our own hero's quest, our own journey. So tell us a little bit about your journey, specifically how you overcame the challenge that you were faced with and how that paved the road to who you are today and the work that you're doing.
I think the best way for me to start is to say that I live by a couple of quotes. And one of my quotes, which really does tie in with you, is obstacles are the necessary bricks on the road to success. And my realization is the fact that, instead of fearing the obstacles or being upset about the obstacles, actually embrace them, because that's where the learning happens and the growth happens. The easiest way for me to describe it is, my life was and I love the way you said that. The fact is that, or we may feel our ordinary lives, but actually they're extraordinary. And I think my life started out ordinary. I mean, I went to school, went to university, graduated, and typical aspect of having a regular narrative that, you get a job. And I just remember sitting at graduation and then, thinking, okay, business and political science, it's a great combination. I mean, who's lucky to get me? Mm-hmm. And I started applying for jobs. And next thing you know, every time I sent out a letter, after a period of time, these letters started coming back to me. And these letters were from employers saying, sorry, we don't have a job. We're not sure what you're looking for. Good luck. And eventually the shift happened where, instead of focusing on, who's lucky to get me, it was like, am I lucky to get a job? What wound up happening is 86 rejection letters, and I don't know why I kept them. It's the size of a brick. It weighs about as much as a brick, but there are 86 letters from companies who said, good luck. And every single letter was a nail in my coffin of self-confidence, because, here you are ready to embark upon a life and a pathway that was, one that we were told this is the route you take. Well, eventually after that, I did get my first job, and, think of it as business and political science. I mean, yeah, government, right? That would be what you get.
Yeah.
And actually, I did get an entry-level government job, which was janitor in a hospital, mopping floors and emptying rubbish bins, and part of the government employees union. Now, instead of looking at this as a negative, again, the obstacles are the necessary bricks on the road to success.
Yeah.
I said, no, okay, here I am. This is the starting point, but what am I going to gain? And there were 3 life lessons that actually still carries me to who I am today. The first lesson, my father said, I don't care what you do the best job possible because your reputation's on the line. And you know what? To this day, anything that I do, whether it's a one-on-one conversation, working on projects, delivering workshops, I pour my heart and soul into it. Second valuable lesson. There were times I used to get on the elevator with nurses, doctors, and administrators. Not always, but there were times, and you were ignored because you're not a professional. I know what it feels like to be ignored. So as a result of that, I have these one-on-one conversations. It's been about 5,000 to date. If you want to have a conversation, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to listen to you and ask questions and be there to support you because I know what it feels like to be ignored. Third valuable lesson, rather than looking at, being a janitor as the obvious, well, this is a job and I have to mop floors and emptying rubbish bins. Instead, I looked at it as, what am I going to learn that's going to help me as I move forward? And I think it taught me that in anything that we do in life, as long as we keep an open mind, there is an opportunity to learn and to grow as an individual. And I think that starting point, at the time, I didn't appreciate it, but I think it was something I desperately needed as a bit of a straightening piece to get me on track. All of that has led me to where I am today. And I often tell people that, those 86 rejections, yeah, I didn't appreciate it in the beginning, but I look at them now. Do you know that many of those companies no longer exist? I still do. So do so many of the people I engage with. You're going to outlast them. And the second most important thing is, do you realize if one of those letters would have materialized, I wouldn't be with you today. My life would have gone in a different direction. And I'm actually really grateful for the direction it's gone because it's given me so much of an opportunity to give back to people, to help them in their journey and to help them grow as individuals.
Absolutely. What a great way to start our discussion here today, Sam. I just, you're talking about, the obstacle being that necessary brick on our life. And I think back to how many obstacles and bricks, I'll say, in my lifetime that I was able to work through, but yet I'm still carrying. And so I'm wondering, as your journey has evolved, are you still carrying any bricks or have you been able to put them down?
Well, those bricks I put down a long time ago, and it was always this appreciation. But there are always bricks that emerge. And it comes back to this thought that I had read from somewhere. And it said that 2 monks were walking along in silence. And they happened upon a stream. And there was a maiden at the stream. And she wanted to cross, but she didn't want to get wet. So she asked one of the monks if they could help her get across. Without saying a word, one of the monks just sort of, bent over, stooped down, put her on his back, and then carried her over and dropped her on the other side. And as they were walking, about 5 miles down the road, the monk that didn't carry the woman suddenly broke his silence and said, you shouldn't have done that. That's not something we should have done. Or you should have done, as that's not part of our practice. And the monk said, I dropped her on the bank. Why are you still carrying her?
Yeah.
And I think that's a poignant piece that, instead of carrying these bricks, realize the significance of them and move on. And I remember I wrote a quote that was, in fact, I just sort of wrote one this morning on my Instagram. And the quote basically said, one must really appreciate within instead of focusing outside. Because what you're going to do is when you focus on within and realize what you have, instead, when we look out, we look at people around us and we look at what we lack.
Yeah.
Let's focus on what we gain, what we have, and celebrate who we are as individuals as opposed to what we lack. Because I could look around and say, yeah, this person's better at that, this person's better at that. But the interesting thing is we never look at, well, what about the people looking at us saying, man, this person has it all together.
Yeah, that is so true. And thank you so much for bringing up that concept, because a lot of the work that we do here at the Awakened Man is helping guys reclaim themselves and find that meaning and purpose. And so when I was getting prepared for our discussion today, I saw that the work that you had done, and I want to get into your trip to India and that as well, and some of the discoveries you had from there. But the thing is that, we'll also talk about, it's about, what are you evolving to? What do you aspire to become? It's not about, hey, I need to lose some weight. I want a 6-pack abs. It's about, what are you aspiring to become? Or what kind of man will you be? Or in order to achieve that, what does that look like, feel like, sound like? How do we embody that practice? And I think it sounds like that's some of the work that you're doing as well.
Oh, absolutely. Because one of the foundational pieces of, I guess, who I am as an individual is, I always tell people, you're not defined by what you do, you're defined by who you are. And I always say, what are the 5 things that you are not willing to compromise in life and career? So for me, 5 things I'm not willing to compromise: servant leadership, story sharing, activator igniter, champion enabler, and a community do-gooder. Those 5 things have become my foundation. And I don't sort of try to align it to opportunities around me. In fact, those 5 things become my foundation. Think of it this way. If you were to, build a house or buy a house, we check the foundation to make sure it's solid. When have we done that with ourselves to say, what's my foundation like? What I do with this, what I call the 5 core elements, and it emerged out of my own life of wanting to realize, who am I as an individual? And those 5 things then become your center point or my center point, but I get people to come up with their 5 core elements as their center point, because then it allows you to pop your head up to say, the current job I'm doing, does it hit 5 out of 5? Does it hit 2 out of 5? Well, if it hits 2 out of 5, what's missing? What I will share with you is, I'm at the point in my life, and for many years now, where opportunities emerge and I compare it to those 5 things. And when it hits 5 out of 5, you don't have a job or career, you hit fulfillment. And I've got about 12 projects. They don't even feel like work, many of them, because of the fact that it aligns.
Yeah.
And the way that I get people to really resonate, and this was out of the second TEDx talk I did, which was, how do you activate the voice within to be louder than the noise around you?
Yeah.
Is, look at the current job you're doing or the past jobs you've had. What do you like about them, or what did you like about it, or what did you not like about it? And then start asking yourself why. What about when you were in school? What did you enjoy? What did you not enjoy? Why? What do you like to do in your spare time? Social life. Why? And start tinkering around with words or looking for things that resonate. But don't try to align it to what you do. But forget that. Put it aside and say, here's what's important to me. And this suddenly becomes your foundation. Now, people are fearful because they're like, Sam, you're making me pick 5 things. What if they're not the right words? I'm like, you start from this point and you can change it anytime in your life. And mine have changed.
Absolutely.
So it's a center point, the way I also describe it is, instead of walking around with a compass in your hand to try to find the direction you need to go, with the 5 core elements, you become the needle and you can guide yourself.
Absolutely. Just love that. And what I really liked out of that was, there's lots of stuff I really liked, but I really liked about how you talked about that these 5 core elements aren't necessarily fixed. Because one of the things that we talk about as well is that when some of the work we do is really taking a deep dive in our values, and are they truly our values, or are they borrowed? And something that we value today, we probably didn't value when we were 20 or 30 or 40, or even take whatever time in your life. And I found that, especially if you go through anything that's traumatic, a real life-changing event, your values and the things that you believe about life and the world changes and shifts, because our perspectives have now changed. And so I liked how these 5 core elements you've created, for yourself, but helping others do that it's malleable. Some of it may stay consistent, but some of it might change and need to change based on what's happening. And are you seeing that within your work?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, yesterday I was working with a student, same thing, nailing down 5 core elements. And they said afterwards, it was like, oh my gosh, like, instead of just being a leaf in a stream that's just flowing along, I've actually pulled myself out of the water, and now I get to guide the direction. Now, again, to be fair, your first job may hit 0 out of 5. It's what you have to do. And you don't have a choice. Corporate culture, pay, benefits, none of this is going to matter. But it starts somewhere. But now when you have the 5 core elements, you can balance it and compare it and say, okay, it's missing this. And you can go talk to your employer to say, look, these are things that are important to me. Is there a way that we can maybe integrate some stuff? And when they learn it, it provides more strength. I also find it really fascinating when I share this exercise with young professionals and they go for a job interview. And the employer asks that famous question, tell me about your strengths. Tell me about who you are. And what do? We look up to the ceiling, because that's where the answers are. And we say, I'm a hard worker. I'm good with technology. I communicate well, and I'm a team player. Great. But so is everyone else.
Yeah.
If you were to say the 5 core elements, I am driven by these 5 core elements, things that make up my foundation, and then you rattle them off and explain why, the employer's sitting there going like, okay, this person has some solid understanding of who they are.
Yeah, totally love that. And what a great example as well, because usually that's pretty cookie cutter response. And it's because we're thinking, what do they want to hear, in part? And we're not assessing our own needs and wants, because it's in any relationship, whether that's business, personal, whatever, we have to have making sure that our needs are met as well. And this tool that you've created, it's a phenomenal way for young people to start to dive into that inner work. Because I wish I had that in my 20s, because in my 20s, man, life was a lot of fun. But if I know what I do now, wow, well, how much different would life be in my 50s?
I wish I would have known myself too. And I always share with not just students, but professionals as well, is, think of a corner store and maybe Starbucks. And let's say not in where you are or where I am, but let's say it's a beautiful sunny day and we need to buy a pair of flip-flops. The corner store, I mean, they sell food, lottery tickets, coffee, fried chicken, hardware, and Starbucks, tea, coffee, food-related items. Yeah. Now, if you need to buy a pair of flip-flops, would you go to Starbucks? And the answer is absolutely not, because we know that they're tea, coffee, food-related items. But you might be able to go to that corner store because they might carry it. And if they don't, next week they will, because somebody came in and asked for it. The idea is, with these 5 core elements piece, is the fact that it becomes your signature. Yeah. And employers are going to be like, okay, this is what you're capable of. And really, it's about building your brand like that Starbucks brand, so people know this is exactly what you can do. Now, people may argue, but isn't it better to be the corner store because you offer so much? The answer to that is, they're not wanting to understand if you can do it. They want to know the people who can do it.
Yeah.
So that's why you need to build that solid brand, that solid piece that says, this is what I'm capable of. And I mean, where I am in life, I mean, opportunities emerge and people are contacting as a result because of that solid background and foundation that you now hold.
Absolutely. And that's the key for it. And this development is always an ever evolving process, right? We keep refining it. We keep refining it. We get to a point where it's no longer that much of a having to think about it, because we've embodied these 5 elements. We've put them in play, and maybe the language around it shapes and changes a little bit as we mature, and it matures in us, as not necessarily getting maturity in terms of age, but as we start to really feel into it, we get an opportunity to express it in many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about the book now, Lost and Found, your journey to India. I'm really intrigued. You have you have this faded picture. Tell me about that whole experience about traveling there, what you were able to discover about yourself and your family, and how that really grounded you.
Yeah, I mean, think of it this way. I grew up in, Canada, but I was born in England. So think of it this way. I'm a British-born Canadian. My parents are from Fiji Islands, and my grandfathers come from India. And you got this multitude of understanding and background. And, the other part of me that was growing up here in Canada is the fact that, I mean, I was born in England, but to many British people, I'm not British. I was raised in Canada, but from a visible standpoint, I mean, I'm Indian, but people would look at me saying, well, you're really not maybe Canadian either. Fiji is distant to me because I never lived there, and India is even more far removed. And the best way for me to describe it is I'm a person from nowhere but everywhere, because there isn't anything that became a solid foundation. However, I always thought to myself, okay, how do I capture the essence of who this person is? And my life was always what I call a thali. And a thali is a platter with segmented dishes. So I'm British, Canadian, Indian, Fijian. I played 11 years in an Irish military pipe band as a drummer. So maybe there's some Irish chutney in there as well. By going to India, I needed to realize a little bit more of that anchor point of, what was missing. Because growing up in Vancouver, the challenge is the fact that, you play hockey, you eat hot dogs and scrape your knee, you bleed maple syrup. I mean, you basically, that's who we are as individuals. But it was only when I got to university and I'm meeting a more global audience, I started to realize what I was missing. And that was part of it. My friends who were, coming from India, Pakistan, or other places around the world would share their culture, share their food. And I felt like I was missing something. So I had a conversation with my parents and my father, especially because, I knew my grandfather from my paternal side left India when he was young and wound up in Fiji. And then eventually my parents moved to England. And I said, but, let's try to find that point. And my father was like, well, we don't really know where this village is. We just know it's in India, it's in the Punjab, but we don't know any of the details. Anyways, as I went on this, started thinking about it, collecting information here and there, but everything was fragmented. But then my cousin, my dad's older brother's son, my dad's older brother had actually made it to the village, but he passed away many years ago, but nobody managed to find out the details of the village. But 2 days before I left for India, my cousin in the States sent me a faded photograph. And the photograph is basically orange, dingy, faded.
Yeah.
And it basically, people from the village. And I thought, okay, well, at least I've got this. I had the name of the village, but then a day before I left, my step cousin contacted me from Fiji and he said, well, I made it to the town nearby and the village name is something else. So think of it as the village name that I understood is called Chadodi. It sits 6 miles from this town called Garshankar in the district of Hoshiarpur. So we're narrowing it down. But my cousin said he made it to Garshankar, the town, but never found the village. But the name of the village is not Chadodi, it's Janodi. And I couldn't find Janodi anywhere, but I found a place called Jandoli, 5 miles from Garshankar. Jandoli, Chadodi, talk to my parents or my father? And he said, maybe, because it sounds like this is the essence. Think of it this way. You've got a foreigner going to a land that should not be foreign to him, in search of a needle in a haystack and not even sure where the haystack was. And it was ups and downs. But for the identity piece, I remember I woke up one morning, like 4 a.m. in Punjab, and it was suddenly, it hit me that I always looked at my life as that thali, this platter. But actually, instead of a platter, I'm actually khichdi. Khichdi is an Indian rice dish, which is a blend of flavors. It's a blend of spices. So instead of segmenting my life, it's bringing it together into a way that I could best describe it as a mix, and embraced it. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm khichdi. But the interesting thing is, so many people that I've shared with so many different cultural backgrounds said, oh my gosh, I'm khichdi. So they're all khichdi. We're all khichdi. The village was an interesting one because it was ups and downs, and just going from place to place, not finding the village, getting disappointed, and in my journal I wrote about it. And finally, I just said, forget what everyone says. Let's just get to Garshankar. Let's just talk to people. And people said, nope, never heard of the village, don't know where it is, etc. But one person said, oh, Chadodi, well, actually, it's up the road this way. I'm very guarded at this point. And the car drives up to this archway. An old man is sitting there. We show him this picture. He looks at it and he goes, actually, yeah, I'm not sure of the house, but I think the person in the back, who you can't even make him out on this picture. And this guy's like about 80 years old, no glasses. I'm like, okay, well, here we go again. Another setback. I'm ready.
Yeah.
And he takes us to a house. People come out. And when they came out, a lady in this picture, she basically looks at this picture and she goes, oh my gosh, that's me. Who are you? And I'm going like, and I was like, wait, did I hear you? This is you in the picture? And she goes, yeah, that's me in the picture, but who are you? So that's how I was able to find my grandfather's house. It was just like, I don't know how it happened, but here's somebody in India recognize themselves, and people are like, are you sure? And when I showed her a picture of my dad's older brother, she said his name without me saying anything. And she goes, yeah, he never came back. Where is he? And I had to tell her he passed away.
Yeah.
But that's where the journey can be captured, called Lost and Found, Seeking the Past and Finding Myself. Our village and my identity felt lost. And then lost and found. It was found. And seeking the past, I had to seek the past in order to find myself through that process. And for your audience, I just wanted to share this point because I get a lot of people saying, well, it's amazing that you were able to find your village. It's amazing that you were able to do that, but I will never do that. And I remember, numerous conversations I've had with people. For example, a person from Sicily, he basically said, we have no records. We have no idea where and how and all that. But, it's great that you did it, but I will never. And I asked him, I said, did you go to Sicily? And he said, no. Well, I went to Sicily. I said, yeah, but when you were there, was there a connection? Did you feel something that this is where your ancestors are from? And he said, well, yeah, that I felt. And I said, well, you did exactly what I did. I had a different experience by finding the house, but you had the same feeling that I had. And I think we all may feel that we feel lost, but equally at the same time, if you feel that connection, you are found.
Oh yeah, that is so powerful. I'm listening to you tell the story, and I'm thinking, I live in Winnipeg today, but I grew up in small town Saskatchewan, and my mom's still there, and I have some siblings there, and so when I make the trip to go visit them, which is about an 8-hour drive, I go down the number one, and I always stop into this small town where I spent my preteen years. And drive in. There's hardly anything left of it. It was a hamlet when I lived there. It's even smaller now with nothing really to sustain it. But when you talk about going home, I think it's so important that we forget the significance of these little things, right? And I'm saying it's a little thing, and your trip was a massive endeavor, but to have the fortitude to continue to do that, and so I like to, that juxtapose that you don't necessarily have to drive to or fly to another country.
Yeah.
Just going back and seeing where you came from, your roots. It could be a province next door, a town next door that you haven't gone to visit, and really getting a sense of understanding of who you are and where you came from. And I think that your book and the work that you're doing is so profound, because I think today we've forgotten about the importance of that in our lives.
Well, and I'm in the process of now making it into a screenplay. So the screenplay is ready, and now we're just going to field it out there. I just think it's a beautiful story that needs to be shared. And it goes back to what you also said in the very beginning. And that was my first TEDx speech, which was discovering the extraordinary in the ordinary. I think the fact is that we feel our lives are ordinary, or we just go through life in autopilot. But embedded in the ordinary are these tremendously extraordinary experiences that sometimes we need to have an awakening. And the way that I describe it is how you take something ordinary and make it extraordinary is through a concept I came up with called CARPE: curiosity, appreciation, reflection, perspective, and experience.
Nice.
Those 5 elements help us to really identify something and add significance, purpose, and meaning to it, so that it makes it even more than the obvious. And I'll just give you a quick example is, I carry with me puzzle pieces. So, there's a single piece of a jigsaw puzzle. And if I was to give a single piece to you, what can you do with one piece? Not much.
No.
But that's what we feel like. We feel ordinary. We don't know where we fit in. We don't know the bigger picture. But the way I make this extraordinary is I tell people, instead of focusing on the single piece, I hold a satchel. And that's where my puzzle pieces are. And if I give you a piece of my puzzle sits incomplete without you. Do you realize how important you are to me? And I see a transformation on people's faces. And, I've given over 5,000 pieces in the world to date, and they're taped to mirrors. People say it reminds them that someone said I matter. Traveled in backpacks around the world. It's in wallets. And 10 years after I started doing this, I get people still finding me and saying, look, I found that puzzle piece you still gave me years ago. I still hold on to it. I think sometimes that's all we need, is that little bit of that extraordinary in the ordinary, just to remind us of how important we are.
Oh man, that is so powerful. And thank you so much for sharing that puzzle story, because I was really looking forward to hearing it. And what a profound way to remind us of just how connected we are. I may not spend every moment of every day with somebody, but there's still that piece of that resonates with them, for them. And it's a great reminder of also for us to maybe reach out to some folks and people we haven't spoken to in a long time, to touch base and see how they are, because they do matter, and they did matter at one point, probably even more than they do today. Just
Absolutely.
love that work that you're doing. Now, you got some practical tools to help us become better communicators. You're obviously a fantastic communicator, but I think some of us struggle at that. And what are some ideas and tips that you have for us to be better communicators?
Yeah, I think to be a better communicator, there are simple things that you can do. Is, again, really understand your foundation, build the confidence within yourself to appreciate who you are. One thing that I often make individuals do for me is I want them to write a personal statement, an introduction. Tell me who you are. And oftentimes people say it's a really difficult exercise, because nobody's really asked. I mean, and I don't want it to be like a running resume of what you do, but really tell me who you are. Because once you can express that, it helps. The other thing is, oftentimes we go to these, what I call networking sessions, but I don't like the term networking. I believe in relationship building. And people come to me saying, look, I have to get to this networking event. I said, okay, wait, but can we just call it a relationship building event first? And they're like, oh, okay. But they're like, how do I get into this conversation? Because they think that they have to ask an amazing dynamic question. And the answer is you don't. If I came over to your house in Winnipeg, knocked on the door, and you open the door, is the first thing you're going to ask me is, Sam, how does one become a better communicator? Or are you just going to basically say, Sam, welcome. How was your flight over? And hope it's not too cold in Winnipeg, and etc. I always say, ask a simple question, and listen and observe. Listen to their response, because they're going to tell you about themselves. And then you can tap in and ask an even deeper question or a secondary question. Or maybe they may ask you, something back to you as a result. So if it was you and I, for example, and you're like, Sam, you live in Vancouver, so tell me about Vancouver. And I tell you all about Vancouver. And I said, well, Elaine, where are you located? And you're like, oh, I'm in Winnipeg. And I was like, oh man, I've been to Winnipeg before. Tell me about Winnipeg. What are some of the really great places you like? And you know what? It becomes a conversation and not awkward. So don't try to come up with the poignant, really deep question that someone's going to be like, oh my gosh, I got it. This person's amazing. They want to learn about you. And it's through just a casual conversation that these things emerge. So listen and observe and build into it and have a dialogue with each other. I think sometimes, it's strange because, we all have our cell phones, and this is a device that connects us, but it also disconnects us. And
It sure does.
I think if anything, just put that aside. Let's have a conversation. Tell me about you. You can learn about me, and then let's have a meaningful dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and such a great piece of advice there. And I think how many times people, and even myself, thinking back at how much time would spend scripting that perfect question or that opening question. And really, it's a conversation, because you're absolutely right. If as a friend and a colleague coming over, it wouldn't be that difficult. And we just make things so much more challenging for ourselves. And when we become curious to know about somebody, the conversation just goes a lot more effortlessly. We've talked about a lot of things here today, and maybe there's something we haven't had a chance to touch on yet. What would be one takeaway you would want our listeners to take with them?
Okay. I think the one takeaway would be, a while back, just probably about last year, I was thinking about this. I said, we've all emerged out of COVID. It was a challenging time. Every single person has been impacted in this world. But apart from that, how do we move forward? How do we make this a better place? And I came up with the need for us to care. But what care stands for is collaboration, adaptability, resilience, and empathy. Collaboration. I mean, you hold things that you're really good at. I hold things I'm really good at. We cannot do everything. So let's collaborate. Let's pull our thoughts and ideas together, because when we collaborate, magic happens. The second word is adaptability. Adaptability means if we collaborate, it's not so dangerous or so difficult. Adaptability is don't fear change, embrace change. We've all had to deal with change. And adaptability means, we're able to become stronger. We collaborate, we can be adaptable. Resilience is this idea that it is a marathon, and there's going to be successes and there are going to be setbacks. I don't call them failures. Failure is final. Setbacks means you get back up, dust yourself off, learn from it, and become stronger. But resilience means don't berate yourself if there is a setback, grow from it. Don't celebrate to excess on successes, appreciate and have gratitude. And empathy. Let's show more care and compassion to each other, because I think that's something totally lacking in society. And, there is a need for us to do more caring and to have care.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And love the acronym. And that is just phenomenal. What a great way to wrap up our conversation today. I just want to say thank you so much for spending time with me today, Sam. We spread some breadcrumbs down and provided some insights in helping people find their way back home. Now, if somebody wanted to get involved with your work and any programs you have, what would be the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, I've got my website where I've got about 190 blog posts, all accessible and free, www.sam-thiara, thiara.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure all of that information is in the show notes for this episode, as well as a link to your book, because I think the book's a phenomenal read. I want to say once again, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Appreciate it. And all the best to your audience. And I'll just leave it with my signature tagline: everyone's life is an autobiography. Make yours worth reading. You're a living story. Embrace it and just Show your magnificence.
Love it.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is the Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.